Hello everybody, welcome back to This Is Now Day 6. I'm Andrew Silke, we're doing the 3D Generalist course and we're doing a ton of mindset videos up front just to get you prepped for this course. We're assuming we're going to be doing this for a while. Okay, so this one is about, what are we doing? We're doing Mastery Curve today. So Mastery Curve is one of my favorite I guess it's a graph, one of my favorite graphs. And what I'm going to do today is talk about basically don't give up, Okay, so we're going to be learning 3D. How do we give ourselves a mindset of, hey, it's very important that I don't give up in this process if I want to achieve a goal of getting a job in the industry or whatever you're doing if you're leveling up your skills and you're already working or whatnot. So let's just go back to what this is, and this is Learning to Love the Plateau is the name of this talk. And why are we doing this, and why is it the Mastery Curve and all this sort of stuff? Well, let's get into it. So it is Learning to Love the Plateau, and we'll find out why, otherwise known as Don't Give Up. We're coming into this now. Obviously, if you're doing 3D art, we're doing this because we enjoy it. We're not doing this, because our dad thinks we're going to get a job or something like this. We're not doing it because, we want to play computer games all day. That's not what this is. You have to get your mindset right. You have to really be doing this for the right reasons. Obviously, it's hard. So then, it's going to help if you do enjoy it and you do like this endeavor. And I assume everyone does. But, if you're doing this because you've been forced to, obviously you shouldn't be doing it. Now that brings me onto the Mastery Curve. And this comes from a book called Mastery by George Leonard. Here is the thing. This is a great book. I highly recommend everyone read it. It's got loads of information packed with learning anything. This book does focus on Aikido. Now, I've never done Aikido. That's a martial art and a Japanese martial art. And George Leonard, obviously loves Aikido. So he's using that as his framework. But we can easily apply all of the skills that he sort of talks about this in this book. He's usually talking about athletics and things like this. But we can just take that book and then come across into 3D and use exactly the same principles, all the usual stuff like find a good mentor, work hard, do the right practice, that kind of stuff. So let's come into like this graph, and I'm an animator, so I like graphs. However, stay with me if you don't like graphs. Stay with me. There's a very simple explanation to this. So here we have a graph of the learning curve. So learning curves, this is what they look like. We assume that you start slow and you get better over time. And if we think about this, we can think about this as being many years. So we've got a graph that's going across many years. And as we get better and better, we're able to create the work faster. We're able to pick it up faster. Everything's fun and games up here. The problem is when we're down here, everything is slow. This is what most people think about mastery and things like this. However, what we want to do is we want to come in and we want to like zoom in to one of these little parts of the curve and zoom right into that little part. And this is where the Mastery Curve sort of comes in. And this is something that George talks about in his book. And this is the important, meaty stuff. So what happens is when we're working on something at home and we're working on our pots, say pot theory from the last talk, we're drawing lots of drawings. If we were doing 2D or in 3D, where we're making lots of models. Or if we're animating lots of things. Now, a lot of the times, that curve that we just saw is not so nice and easy as we think it is. When we zoom down into, say, that 1 month sort of a threshold, or even just a couple of months, we can work for, a week or many weeks and not really get anywhere. And this is what George sort of talks about, learning to love the plateau. The plateau is where we are most of the time. We're mostly working and not really getting anywhere and not having those wonderful days of epiphany moments where we're like, yay, we got it. This is awesome. Most of the time we're on these flat areas. So as we work along, all of a sudden one day something happens and a thing clicks, like we're doing, the model we're making over and over. Suddenly we have this epiphany moment. Oh, that's what Silke was talking about there. That suddenly has clicked and now we're on this win and we're all happy. And we've had this endorphin sort of rush of nice endorphins, and here we are at the top of that win, and we're really happy. Now, what inevitably happens is that after that little win that you have, of course, we come back to Earth, and we don't keep going like we wanted to. We come back and we regress a little bit. So there's a lot of regression in learning. Like you'll be here and then the next day you'll be back again. Like, for example, when I showed that sumo wrestling sculpt in the last video, the very next day I'm doing a sculpt, it's not as good. Okay, so like we're having these periods of wins, and then on the sculpt number 79, we're back again to where we were the week before. So now we come to here and we're working again, and now we're on the plateau again, and it's kind of like boring for, you know, quite a few more weeks. Now, the important part to sort of think about is this little part here, this little part of the graph right there. What happens is we tend to not compare ourselves to where we were, you know, 3 weeks and 1 day ago. We don't compare ourselves to there. We tend to compare ourselves to where we were 3 weeks ago, like here. So you're here, and it's like, hey, this has been 3 weeks. Silke's told me do this plot theory, do it every day. I've been doing it every day, just like he told me to. What's going on? 3 weeks ago, I was actually better than what I am now, and therefore this isn't working. So at this point here, the person might consider quitting, and they'll be like, this is not working. I'm going to give it up. I'm going to try something else. Okay, and they quit. Well, if we zoom into that curve, little does the person know they're about to have another epiphany moment. So they're about to really experience another win, and that would catapult them up well above where they are. This is not a day by day have little, you know, wins sort of a progress graph. This is months, and we have a lot of time on the flat curve, and that's how it works. So you've got to kind of remind yourself, this is a practice, and I'm not getting anywhere, but that's okay, because I trust the process over time will improve. And that can be the difficult thing to do. So let's have a look at a couple of quotes from Mastery. He says, all significant learning is composed of brief spurts of progress, followed by long periods of work where it feels as if you're getting nowhere. Now, we've all experienced this in life. We're not getting anywhere. How do we move forward from here? Well, that is the plateau. So he says, to take the master's journey, you have to practice diligently, striving to hone your skills and attain new levels of competence. That just means practice well, yeah. But while doing so, you also have to be willing to spend most of your time on a plateau. So this is where it comes into the learning to love the plateau. Most of the time is going to be spent on that plateau. It's going to be fairly boring, okay? To keep practicing even when you seem to be getting nowhere. This is the important thing, is like, you have to be willing to spend most of your time on that plateau to keep practicing even when you seem to be getting nowhere. That is the important part. So it's repetition, it's boring, we don't have a win, but we're going to keep going. So the most successful path to mastery is to practice for the sake of practice itself and not for the result. Now, you know, there's certain quotes that you think about from time to time, and then you come back to them many years later, and they have more, they're more profound than the first time you read them. You thought they were pretty good the first time, and then come back and you read it again, and you're like, wow, that's really good. This is sort of one of those quotes where we've got like, the successful path to mastery is to practice for the sake of practice itself and not for the result. Well, that doesn't make much sense in the traditional way of thinking. Like, of course we're practicing because we want to get somewhere. Like, why are we practicing just for the sake of practice itself? And I think there's many levels to this quote that you can sort of break it down and apply it to life. We practice because we like to practice, you know, and I know that doesn't make a lot of sense to people who are starting out on this 3D journey. I don't want to practice just because I want to like practice. I want to practice because I want to get good at this 3D thing. You know, I do want a result. And I think that, you know, just to take it in a slightly different way, I talk to a lot of students about their goals, and they're like, well, if I was just at that big company, you know, ILM or Weta or, you know, Valve or one of these huge games companies, Blizzard, if I was just at that company, I would be happy because I've achieved my goals. That's why I'm doing it, so I can achieve my goals and work in one of those companies. Or if I get to direct my own film one day, then I'll be happy. Or if I get to make my own indie game and have it sell, then I will be happy. And unfortunately, a lot of these things are not the case. Like, when I've been in these sorts of places, when you get there, everyone is just the same. They're just the same people. And this is why I'm like, well, why do you want to do this thing? You know, you want to continually just try to get better, and that means practicing. So this is this continual practice just for the sake of getting better. there shouldn't really be a goal to this other than, I just want to constantly improve, which is practice. There shouldn't be this thing like when I achieve that thing and get to that specific company, I'm going to be happy. That is my goal. These are very sort of made up rules. And how do you know? How do you know if you're going to be happy when you get to that place? A lot of people aren't. They're just the same. And they realize there's yet another goal to be had. And it sort of feeds on itself. And I think someone who talks about this a lot is Jim Carrey. And I just Google it really quickly here. I think everybody should get rich and famous and do everything they ever dreamed of so they can see that it's not the answer. Okay, this is not, what he's saying here is if you're extremely famous and you get everything that you wanted and you desired, it's not the thing that makes us happy. It's not the end goal. It's not enlightenment in that sort of a sense. So getting back to George, he says, masters love the practice, and because they love it, they get better. And the better they get, the more they enjoy the practice, and it's an upward spiral. So you want to really encourage yourself to start enjoying the plateau, enjoying the art of practice, because you know where it's getting you. Okay, yes, there is a result that you're getting at it, you're getting better, but it's not this sort of result like I'm going to be, I'm going to have $1 million, or I'm going to produce that sort of artwork and that will make me happy. And if I get, 50 likes on Instagram, then I will be happy. These are sort of like esoteric likes that we shouldn't really worry about so much. We should just worry about getting better by practicing every day and encourage this upward spiral of kind of getting addicted to learning and getting addicted to practicing and getting better at the art. So a lot of the problem with this journey is that we are practicing things that are below the surface. This is the great famous iceberg analogy where a lot of the things that people see when they see an artist or they see a great piece of artwork is they see, the artwork and they go, oh, this is amazing. That artist is just talented. When of course it's just this huge amount and this huge volume of work that they've completed in their spare time, that you will never see, that they've done, diligently over many years, that creates that great artwork, that they can do in a short amount of time. And that's what it is for us as well when we're learning, is we really have to get through, this bottom of the iceberg sort of set of stuff. So now I'm going to segue a little bit into quitting. So what is quitting? Quitting is when you give up. Now, as a mentor, when I'm mentoring students, I have, the students coming to me and they're facing all these real life problems. So just talk about this a little bit at the moment. One of my students in particular, who I'll talk about in a second, came to me and, a lot of stuff was going on in his life. And I just read some other 3D artist that day with some, pep talk thing on the internet. And the pep talk was something along the lines of, when you feel like quitting on this journey, someone else is. So, of course, if you're trying to get into a company or get a job, then it is a competition of sorts. There is a market, and you have to be good enough in order for the company to say, yeah, we think you'll be of use to us. So there is a competition kind of game happening. And every time that someone else in the world is quitting, makes it a little bit easier for you. So if it's hard for you, it's also hard for other people, is the way that I'm sort of trying to say this. I think that really struck home to Ben at the time. And he's like, yeah, this is hard. That means it's hard for other people. So therefore, if I keep going, it is a little bit of a war of attrition. Like, in other words, like there is a point where, I will have abilities because I just chose to keep going. So this is the climbing the mountain. It's not supposed to be easy all the time. This is, okay, we live in nice lives. Most of us, we don't have a lot to worry about in terms of, some of the people that are in the world dealing with real problems like, sickness and health and war. However, and if you are in those places, then even more luck to you. Psychologically, sometimes this can be remarkably hard. And for those of us that are in the West, we call it first world problems. And that is like when things are difficult, then things are difficult, but they really shouldn't be. Like, I go to work and I'm making pretty pictures. Why am I depressed? These sorts of first world problems, like it really shouldn't be a problem, but it is. And this is the way that the mind plays tricks on us. We've got these expectations, and the result is often different. And it's often hard. So we've got expectations versus reality. So I like to talk about this. Now, this is a great one because it's about art, and we all want to be. It's what Ira Glass will talk about in the next video tomorrow. He talks about we all have this expectation of where we want to be, And then we look at where we are and we're disappointed, and he's talking about creating a large volume of work in order to, keep getting back over to here. But I'm going to take this analogy and put it in a slightly different way that's quite different, and that is that I went to a psychologist once, and the psychologist, I didn't go and see her, I was just chatting to her at a wedding, I think it was, or something like that. And I said, what is it about people who come to you, if you were to say one sentence to sum up the people that come to you and have big problems in their lives, what is the number one thing that everyone makes the mistake of doing, or what it is about these people? And she said to me very simply, she said, look, when someone comes to me, the biggest problem is always they have an expectation of how the world should be, and that the world is not that expectation. The world is different from that expectation. And she said that's what causes depression, that's what causes frustration and anger and these sorts of things. I mean, if you didn't expect to be fed with nice meals every day, then just being on, the dole, here it is in Australia, or some sort of social welfare program, and you get fed would be exciting to you. So it's kind of like this expectations versus reality. When you expect the world to be a certain way and it isn't, that's what can get hard about it. And I want to say that every student who comes to me has a certain expectation about what this CG thing is, like what the 3D world is like, what working in VFX companies or games is like. And when they get to experience the reality of it, it's often quite a different thing than they had in their head. So I just want to prepare people for that, the expectations of what it is versus the reality are often kind of counter to each other. So you really have to be willing to learn and change and roll with it as you discover, what the world is. Because, the way that we're sold things these days on the internet, on Facebook, social media, the making of videos of computer games, it's kind of like this almost Disney-esque world of what it really is. And when you get there, you'll look around and go, hey, what's going on here? And I think that's where a lot of this frustration about people in VFX getting quite angry on Twitter and saying, I worked for Marvel and it sucked and blah, 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 blah. Well, just what were you expecting? What were you expecting when you worked for Marvel? What was really wrong? And I think some of the times, if you are being made to work overtime and you don't want to, then you don't have to. Just go home. This is how the world works. People will try to force you into things, through words, but they're just words. So don't listen to them and do what you need to do for your own mental health and welfare. And I also talk to people who are working hard as well, and they're kind of getting nowhere. So there is that as well. If you're one of these people that says well, I am working every day and I'm just frustrated because I've been doing this for X amount of years and I'm not getting anywhere. Well, you've got to be willing to change. I think a lot of people that I've talked to have this sort of this idea of the world, this expectation of what it is. I think I can just, go and make a short film and make a movie and it should look great. When the reality of it is quite difficult, and they're and at the same time they're saying to me, I just need a job, I need to get paid. And it's well, maybe you shouldn't be making a short film if you just need to get your foot in the door. Maybe you shouldn't be taking that big project with all that hair and that, muscle sims and all this craziness that you think is easy, just because some, YouTube video showed you it is. It's not, that's a job of its own. Maybe you shouldn't be doing that stuff. Keep to the single stuff that will just get your foot in the door so that then you can learn that stuff later. Might be a good idea. And I do see a lot of people that are not willing to change. So just because you are practicing and, I'm doing my pots every day, blah, blah, blah. Well, a lot of it's just doing the simple well, which is going to lead into a video that I'm going to do in 2 days. We need to be able to learn how to do the simple well for what industry wants. And we need to be able to change. We need to be able to listen to people. We need to be able to grow. We need to not, if we are not working professionally, we need to listen to professionals and take their advice and go with it. And we have to listen to the right people. And this can all be difficult because I know that there's a world of internet out there. But you kind of do, at a certain point, need to trust a sensei of some kind, some sort of a mentor or a school or whatever, and just go with what they say and then go, okay, this is the way, and you need to be smart about that. So just because you're practicing doesn't mean necessarily that you're going to get good. You have to practice in the right way. So that leads me to motivation. I came across this video quite early in my teaching career, and it really took a lot of the weight off me as a teacher. I think those of us who do teach, we feel a certain burden of responsibility for the student. We have to if the student's not doing well, then that must be because of us. And I'm here to say the job of a teacher, as far as I see it, and I see this as my role, is not to motivate you guys. Like, I'm not a motivational coach. And I saw this guy having a big rant about it. He's like, I am not a motivational coach. And I really related to that. I think that the role of a teacher or a guide or a mentor is not to be a motivational coach, because at the end of the day, it's up to the person to take those steps. Like, we can point the map to the top of the mountain and say, go that way. But if you go the wrong way, or if you don't take steps every day to get to that mountain, then there's really nothing we can do for you. And it's up to you yourself to go and get motivated. And maybe you should hire a motivational coach of your own, or go and read motivational books, or figure out how to get motivated. But ultimately, as a 3D teacher, I'm just drawing a path of how to get to that mountain. This is the way that I believe is a good way. I've been there, I've walked it. I've had many students that have walked that path. I'm not here to like fire you up and give you energy to get there. That is on you. Here is the map. Go and walk that way. And if you don't want to, then it's no loss on my side. That's very much how I think about it. So I'm thinking very much in terms of a teacher as like, here's the map. The map's, it's hard to walk that map. Like, I'm not going to lie to you. That map is not a particularly easy one to walk. Sometimes that path, there's a lot of little gotchas and a lot of things, traps along the way, and it's not the most pleasant experience sometimes, but that is the path. And if you're willing to work that path, then you can get the rewards, which is the treasure at the end of getting there. And like we were talking about with George Leonard's book, it's part of that treasure is just finding that, practicing is the key to mastery and to learn to love to practice. So there's that part of it too from a teaching thing. So now I'm going to talk about Ben. Ben's my first student, actually, that I ever had privately. Came to me privately. And I recently worked on the Batman film over at Weta, and we animated a big chunk of the second half of the car chase, or the last third of the car chase in the Batman. And no one will ever tell you that, except if you go to the Weta page. But in the making of it, it seems like there was no digital VFX in that sequence, but I can tell you there was a lot because I was there. And interestingly, I was animating the Batmobile in a couple of shots and some other things. And I was chatting to an old student of mine who was there. He's Ben, and he's my first student from a long time ago. And I said, oh, what are you up to, man? What project are you on? Because I had been at Weta before, and he's on different projects, so I can't see what he's doing. And he's like, oh, I'm on this film, The Batman. And I'm like, oh, I'm on that film too. And so I could suddenly see what he was doing. And he's like, oh, I modeled up this Batmobile. And so Ben actually modeled this Batmobile completely. He did the interior and everything, and I had a big chat to him about that. But I do want to sort of rewind. And that was a nice surprise for me. But I want to rewind back to the beginning when I first met Ben. And I met him because someone reached out to a friend of mine that he wanted to learn CG, and they just asked the right people at Animal Logic, which was the company doing Happy Feet at the time in Sydney. And then they wanted a mentor of some kind. And my friend said, oh, I can't do it. Do you want to do it, Silke? You like teaching. So I went, oh, yeah, whatever. And I said, I don't know, come pay me X amount of dollars an hour like a piano teacher, and I'll teach you. And this is sort of what got me into this business of teaching 3D animation. And so he came to my house, and we had a bit of a chat. And Ben was in real estate, and he was not happy with his job. He felt like, he brought toys to work and put them on this desk, and people, were laughing at him about that. And I said, oh, dude, you'll fit right in as an animator or in the VFX industry. No one's ever going to laugh at you for that, because that is the norm. He's like, I just feel like I'm in the wrong place in my life. I feel like I'm in the wrong company. I feel like I belong somewhere else. And so he took on the hard journey with not very much money and funding in order to change careers. And I think sometimes this is a little bit harder for some people who, already are making money and they have responsibilities, like they have a girlfriend and a life, and their parents expect them to be out of the house. It is harder, like later in life, to change course. And so Ben came to me many times, and as I said, he was really having some hard times, and there was a bunch of health issues that were happening in the family, and some really devastating stuff. And he came to me with this grim look on his face, but he kept working and he kept going through it, and then he ended up getting a job. And I'd like to show you guys his credits here, because you can see all the films that he's worked on since that. I think this was way back 2007, 2006 ish, and when he first came to me. And you can see all the credits since then of all these movies that he's like, I just want to work in the movies. Well, mission accomplished, Ben, as you can see. He's done a lot of stuff, including the Batman, but also working on, all these different films. some really big names there of these huge VFX films. So just want to congratulate Ben on that. But, it's not until you see someone really personally, who you're mentoring go through some tough times and really, work their heart out in order to get somewhere, and you realize, and then you see that being paid off in dividends at the end of their career. And, the journey continues when you're in the VFX company too. Like I said, just because you're at the VFX company doesn't mean that life automatically gets nice. It's still a journey for all of us. So I just wanted to bring that little story there. And the real thing was, like, he realized that, every day he kept going, someone else was quitting and taking that job. Which brings me back to the very last part of this talk, which is about people in our lives. So one of the things that I've noticed is, we don't want to quit. This is about like practicing every day, learning to love the plateau, learning to practice, and keeping on going and not quitting. And there are other problems in our lives that come along. And I love this little thing here. I mean, this is a computer game where we've got the mum yelling at the son for playing computer games. And believe it or not, if you are working to be a 3D animator, sometimes your family will think that you're playing computer games all day. And I'm just here to say that's completely normal, and a lot of my students experience that. Everyone has different people in their lives, and some people are more supportive than others. By far, the easiest way to get work in this industry is if you have a supportive family around you who are quite supportive of what you're doing and your goals, and are willing to pay to keep a house over your head and food on your table. That usually is young adults where that happens. But everyone is in a different situation. Not everyone has that. Some people have mothers or family members that do not think that they're going in the right direction and will constantly say as such. Other people are much older, might have kids and families. All this stuff makes life complex and difficult. That, unfortunately, is for the individual to sort out. But I'm just going to say that this is very common with everyone. Like, just because, you might have a mother or, a wife, or, family members who are not completely supportive in your goals of being a VFX or a 3D artist in computer games, doesn't mean that everyone else has a swimming time of it. And I've seen that firsthand, and a lot of times I do end up talking about that with a student, being a one-on-one class about, their family situation and that, and I just sort of give them a bit of a backup and say, okay, here's where you are. If you keep going, you will get a job. I know your parents going to be uncomfortable about this because, you're coming to me as a mentor, and, parents can usually go to their friends if they're in university or they have some sort of badge. Oh, my son's in university, he's learning this. That's sort of a good thing. But if I just seeing this guy, Andrew, every week, and he wants to be a 3D animator, like, the parents start feeling more and more, how would I say it, not at ease about the situation, and they can become problematic. So this is totally normal, and everyone has to deal with it in their own way, and everyone has different situations on that. So the last thing I'm going to say is, if we do want to practice this pot theory thing, and we want to get good and we want to get better every day, a big part of this is going to be practice. So the problem that everyone faces is that you do need to do more than 10 hours a week. You really got to do 10 to 20 hours a week minimum in order to really make dividends in this process. What I say to people if you're having trouble is just make sure you do 20 minutes. Like, just pick up, oftentimes just getting started is the hardest part. So just give yourself a timer that every day you do 20 minutes. And if you don't feel like after that 20 minutes doing more, then stop. But oftentimes I tend to find with students that it's easier for them to keep going after they start. And the hardest part is the starting process of that daily practice. So that 20 minutes is just a good little tip. That's a practical tip of doing work every day. And then that will get you started. And often it's easier. Just, that 20 minutes can easily end up being 4 hours for some people. Once you're going, that can be a lot easier. But that just getting started is the hard part. So there you go, guys. That is the talk about learning to love the plateau, otherwise known as the mastery curve by George Leonard, otherwise known as don't give up, keep going, work, figure out ways of having a mindset where you are going to build mastery in this endeavor. So there you go, guys. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about the last part of this trilogy of talks. We've got pot theory, we did it yesterday. Today is about learning to love the plateau, and tomorrow is about devil isn't in the details, and that will all be about finishing and polishing work so that it's presentable to get ourselves jobs. So let's leave it there, and I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.